Welcome to week 2, everybody. Second week of the podcast and the first official episode of Leveling Up. If this is your first time checking in, my name is Jeff, or JCwithTHEshot, classic JCC on Twitter. And I want to welcome you to level 1. And so level 1 is all about kind of where my journey with gaming and video games started. And it's, as I mentioned in the prologue episode, gaming has been a huge part of my life since I was young. I grew up as an only child and lived in a small town where I didn't really have neighbors that were like close to me that I could walk to. I didn't have friends that I grew up with that were like right next door to be able to hang out with. So for me, gaming became something that I spent time on after school. Would invite friends over, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But aside from sports, like, gaming was what I did. And it's funny because I had a friend that posted a tweet yesterday about a staff that he oversees, and they were talking about how old the GameCube is. And for me, I tweeted at him and I was like, man, I started with the Super Nintendo, which is generations before the GameCube. And so it made me feel old. Like, thinking about gaming and thinking about how far gaming has come sometimes is so wild to me, to see where it started when in the 90s. I mean, it didn't start in the 90s, but where I started playing in the 90s to where it is now. 20 years later, 25 years later, to see where gaming has evolved. And now you play games and you are almost so immersed into the game that it almost feels like it's real sometimes. Obviously, virtual reality is something that's been in existence for 5 years now, if not a little bit longer. And even that, like, you are immersed in a world that feels like your own. And so, for me, my journey and the first game that I can remember playing are Super Mario World and Yoshi's Island, and Super Mario Brothers, Super Mario Brothers 2, Super Mario Brothers 3, like that whole series. And so obviously with my logo, that's a take on that, because that's, for me, where I started. That is really the point in my life, as crazy as it sounds, that everything changed. And I was too young to understand probably what that even means. And if I had an opportunity to go back and talk to my younger self, like, I would not understand what was taking place or what I was saying. I just always remember growing up, and my parents would say, "You're playing too many video games. Like, go outside, do something. You're playing too much." And that it's funny because they would never really hold that standard, because, like, for me, growing up, I had the privilege of, one, again, being an only child, but my parents weren't necessarily the most strict parents either. So when they grounded me, like, I never was really grounded. Like, there was no action to that. And so I think back to, like, my friends when I was growing up, and them being grounded from video games, like, their parents actually taking away their video games, taking away the power supply cord, and hiding it, or taking the whole console and hiding it. But for me, I never really had that. And so going back to where my journey began, playing these games when I had to have been younger than 10, um, hooking them up, to our TV, and then playing with my cousins, because my cousins were the ones that owned the systems. And so they would bring it over and we would play. And then the first system that I ever owned, I remember for Christmas one year, getting the N64. And the N64 was one of those systems that if you had it, like it was so, I don't want to say high tech for the time period, but like almost to an extent. Like you had to install a rumble pack into your controller and into your console for it to have vibrations that correlated with the game. Like that is so crazy to me to think that it was a completely extra feature that you had to pay for. And so I remember playing Fight Night when I was younger, that being one of the first games I got. Donkey Kong 64, which I don't think I ever actually beat to this day. Maybe I can find an emulator online somewhere, but never actually finished it. It was so difficult, and I could not find everything that I needed to find. And then obviously Mario 64. Phenomenal game. Like people still play that game to this day. Like people are still speedrunning, still finding ways to beat the game in the fastest time possible. And for me, like I never got every single star. Like I didn't care when I was younger. Like I just wanted to play it, beat the game, not care about like a perfectionist or 100% of the game. And it was an opportunity for me to just explore that realm. And from there I went into getting the Game Boy and the Game Boy Color, playing Pokemon. That was the reason people bought Game Boy Colors to start with, was because Pokemon was a thing. And then obviously the Game Boy Advance SP came out. Well, I should say the Game Boy Advance came out. Had that. I'd never got the SP. My friends had the SP. That was the one that flipped open. Never had that. But then I had the DS when it came out. I actually got it a little bit after the release and a few months later because somebody was selling theirs, so I bought it. I was like, okay, this is cool. Like I played WarioWare on there, and obviously there was a new Pokemon game coming out, for every Game Boy that came out. And for me, it was about exploring a world that didn't exist that I could dive into and just be a part of and be able to come back and talk to my friends about what happened or like what Pokemon that I caught, and then trade with them. Although it was weird growing up because in order to trade with your friends you had to have a trade cable, so you had to connect your Game Boys to each other to be able to trade. And like thinking back then, like not everybody had a trade cable because again you had to pay extra for that. So it's just so funny to me to think back to where it all began. Never had the PlayStation growing up, PlayStation or PS2. My cousins had that. So I would play Gran Turismo on their PlayStations. I would play Jak and Daxter. I remember playing Inspector Gadget as well. There was an Inspector Gadget game that I used to play at my aunt's house, and never really understood how to beat it. It was just one of those things. I was just like, I'm too young to really understand. And then after the N64, the GameCube came out, so I got the GameCube, and then the Xbox, so the original Xbox. Obviously picked up Halo. That was kind of my first FPS that I ever played. The first-person shooter that I ever got into playing was Halo. And then Halo 2 came out, and Halo 2, I think for me, is the turning point in which gaming took a complete different turn for me. Obviously, you know, with the GameCube, like, you're gonna have your Nintendo games, you're gonna have your Mario parties, you're gonna have your Double Dash, you're gonna have Smash Bros. So like, I played those with friends and stuff, but when Halo 2 came out, and I still have the Steelbook Collector's Edition of it. This was the first game that I ever played online. When I had to have been like 12 when I first got this. And then played it for so many years. And I remember when we first got internet and Wi-Fi, like when it first came and was available in our town, like it's still one of those things that there are places you go to that these companies cannot place cables in the town that you live in. And this was the case. Like, I grew up and nobody could be on the phone or nobody could be on the computer because it would mess up the internet connection that you have. And so I would sit there and play Halo 2 online, and then in the middle of a game, like, my mom would be on the computer and it would just stop. Like, the game would freeze, and then I would lose connection, and I'd be like, why am I losing connection? Why am I getting banned from playing, for quitting games? And I never could figure it out for the longest time, until, like, I was playing in the middle of a game, and my mom got on the computer in the middle of a game, and that's when it clicked. That's when we were like, okay, can't use the computer and can't play Halo online at the same time. It's crazy to think that's where internet was, and to think of where it's at now. And so I remember growing up and having my friends come over to pull all-nighters, cracking open 2 liters of Mountain Dew, ordering pizza. My mom would buy a bunch of snacks for us. She would make, like, goodies, and we would just stay up all night, and we would play Halo 2. We would start the campaign on Legendary, and then we would just play throughout the whole night to finish it, because we wanted to collect all the skulls. We wanted to do it, and to this day, Halo 2 is the one campaign that I've probably played at least 10 times through. Such a great game, such a great campaign, and I think for me that's where I fell in love with playing games with my friends and playing online and getting invested into what this podcast is about. Like, if I were to tell my younger self back then that I'd be doing a podcast about gaming and about how it's played a role in my life, like, I don't know if I would have believed myself, because I'd be like, okay, we're playing Halo 2, like, what's more? Like, what's next? And so moving forward, Halo 3 came out, so the Xbox 360 came out. Obviously I had to get that. It was the newest thing on the block. The Wii came out. PS3 did not come out yet. That was later. But the Wii came out, and I was like, I can't have both. So I stuck with the 360 and had so many issues with my 360 because I would always get the Ring of Death. And the Ring of Death is one of those things that if you know, you know, and it doesn't really happen today. I think I went through like three or four different Xbox 360s that I had to keep sending in and getting a new one back because of the Ring of Death. And back then they would do that. Like, they would allow you because it's faulty on their end, right? So, moving forward, going into high school, Xbox 360, Halo 3, Halo ODST also came out when I was in high school. So these were the games that I was constantly playing with my friends. And, I think it was Halo 3. It was either Halo 3 or ODST that you were able to create your own maps. And this is where the fun really began, because my friends and I would spend hours creating maps. We would play user-created maps, community-created maps, and just mess around and play with random people online. And so that's where a lot of that happen and began for me, of like the creativity piece at least. And then I went to college and still had my 360, because that's what was still out. Brought that to college. Honestly, still played Halo in college. Freshman year, like we'd play with people on the floor. And then we would, just go through all of that. And then around that time, around the 360 time as well, and I think I messing up my timelines here a little bit. The PS3 did come out, but I didn't get that until probably my junior year of college. So this would have been 2014 that I would have gotten a PS3 because I bought it off somebody at college for super cheap. And this is when I started playing and building connections with more people. This is when I got into playing Call of Duty. Modern Warfare 2 and Modern Warfare 3 are still the best Call of Duties to this date. I will argue that to the day that I die. Nothing plays like those two. And no Call of Duty will ever match either of those in my lifetime. And then the PS4 came out junior year 2014. It was 14-15, and as soon as I got my PS4, my PS3 took a shit and it died. Like literally as soon as I plugged in my PS4, my PS3 quit and I could never get it to work again. So it's weird how that timing worked out. So switched to PS4, and that's what I still play on today. It's actually really funny because when I went to grad school in 2015, I sold my PlayStation 4 to buy an Xbox One, and then my best friend, who will be on with us next week, ended up buying a PS4. They all started playing, all my friends started playing Rainbow Six, so I was like, shit, okay, I'm going to buy a PS4 again. So I bought a PS4 again, so I've gone through two. Still had my Xbox One. On my Xbox One, I was playing Halo 5 with my other group of friends, and then played that so much. And then it really just, I transformed into playing PS4. And I use my Xbox more so for entertainment now. So fast forwarding to now, PS4 has been kind of my rock over the last 5 years at this point. And, Rainbow Six, Fortnite came out. Fortnite is huge, and I will continue. Fortnite will be something that we talk about in a multitude of episodes. But it wasn't until Fortnite came out that I started taking gaming more seriously and started streaming 2 years ago now. So Fortnite has become one of those life-changing games for me as well. Because I wouldn't be doing this if Fortnite didn't exist. So, thinking back to the top 3 games that have probably brought me to this point in my life, Mario 64, Halo 2, and Fortnite have probably been the 3 staples in my life as far as gaming goes. And, obviously there are plenty of games that I've played and have loved. I wouldn't put these as my top 3 favorites, but they are the top 3 most influential games that I've played in my lifetime. And it's so crazy to think that these 3 games or 3 franchises are still happening. Like there's a brand new Halo coming out at the end of this year. Like people are still playing Super Mario 64. Like people are still playing Fortnite, and Fortnite is so huge. Like it is so wild to see the growth of gaming. And that's what I want to continue to explore through this podcast and continue to explore with my guests that I have on here. As I stated in the prologue, like talking about the impact that gaming has had on them. And, this story and pieces of kind of my journey. This is just the beginning of what I'm going to be sharing throughout this. I could talk about this for hours, and like this podcast, I don't want to be super long, right? Like I'm not gonna sit here and do an hour and a half long podcast because that like nobody's gonna listen to all of that. So for me, like I said, it's those three games that have been the most influential in kind of my journey. And I'll kind of dive into each one of those, in the coming podcast of what it was about those games that brought me so much joy, and really really going back and recapping what it was, because I think there's a lot to say about those games and the games that we pick in our lives that have almost made our experiences and who we are and the experiences that we had with those games. Like, you will always remember the first game that you ever played. Let me back up there. If you were cognizant and your brain was developed to the point that you're able to retain, like, there's something about specific games and specific life moments that brings you back to that moment, right? Like, there are specific things that take place and bring you back to that point. And so those are mine. Like, I will play those games over and over if I could. Like, I play Fortnite every single day for the most part. Halo 2, if I had the capabilities, I'd go back. I mean, I do, Master Chief Collection, but I would go back and play that campaign through and through. Super Mario 64, same thing. Great games that are going to stand the test of time, in my opinion. And I know that there are people out there that feel the exact same way about these games. And with this week, like, I want to encourage you and hear from you. Like, what are the three games that have impacted your life and have been staples to your journey? And you can comment that down below in the comment section, because I'm legitimately curious. Like, I want to see what those look like for you all. And we'll hear what those games are for our guests in the coming episodes. And when we get to it, like, I'm also gonna dive in and talking about what characters I feel like I relate to and hold a lot of not necessarily passion towards, but those that have provided a lot of experiences and their story just continues to develop and I'm able to relate to. And so that'll be a whole another episode. But level 1 is about starting from the beginning and talking about the story and talking about kind of where my progression has been and my experience of, where did I start? Where am I now? Obviously, there is a lot more in between that I'm going to continue to cover and that I want to continue to talk about. But like I said, that could go on for hours. And, for me, this is my backstory. This is my backbone. This is where I come from. This is why I'm in here, right? Why I'm in front of this camera. And I'm excited to continue to share that story with you all. And I hope you're excited to stay alongside that as well. So I know this has been kind of a longer episode. I'm super looking forward to having our guest, BearClaw613, on the podcast next week, where we'll get to hear a little bit about his story and a little bit about how gaming has kind of come into his life and impacted his life in different ways. And having our first guest on the show, level 2, I'm excited. And so thank you all for tuning into this week. Like I said, there's more to come with my story. I don't want to give it to you all right at the beginning. Just want to give you a little tease of some of the things that I'm going to talk about and continue to refer back to in future podcasts. And so I hope you all have a great week. Hope you're staying safe. Hope you're finding ways to maintain your own self-care through all of this, and you're telling those people that around you that you care about them and that you're there for them, because we all need somebody there for us during all of this. And as far as this week goes, thank you for tuning in. Please like, subscribe, share. if you're willing to. I really do appreciate it. Drop your 3 most influential and impactful games down below. I'd love to hear from you all, and we will see you next week. Thanks for tuning in, and have a good week.